And our final breed group of cattle will be our American breeds. And our American breeds are our Bos Indicus or Bos Indicus cross breeds. When we think about Bos Indicus cattle, the predominant breed of Bos Indicus cattle here in the United States would be our Brahman. These cattle are known for their tropical adaptivity, so they're adapted to the hot, humid climates of the Gulf Coast region of the United States, and especially adapted to the climates here in Texas. Those cattle, in addition to their adaptability to the heat and humidity, they're also more hardy, more insect resistant, just more parasite resistance in general. They're also known for their maternal ability and their ability to make excellent mother cows in the Gulf Coast region of the United States. In addition to that, they've got a tremendous amount of hybrid vigor and performance in them as well. Some of the downsides of those breeds, and one of their biggest downside is, on average, they tend to be lower in marbling and have lower quality grades. Again, on average within that breed group. So with those breeds that we have for our market steer shows here in Texas, we have our Brahman, Brangus, Santa Gertrudis, Cimbra, and then finally our American Breeds Cross, which would be a combination of American breed or Brahman and an additional breed.
When we look at the Brahman steers, the Brahman steer classification, when you show a Brahman steer, is it's supposed to show 50% characteristics of a Brahman. What we talk about that, we look at the American breeds, and the Brahman is very unique. It has a prominent hump when you look at it, especially showing a 50% phenotype, and it also has the sheath score on it ranges from low to high. As breeders progress in their herds and cattle herds with the purebred Brahman or American Brahman, you do have that. They're trying to clean up the underlines on the steer. So what we're looking at and basing all of our information on and classifying a half-blood Brahman steer is a prominent hump that it does have. When we look at our acceptable breed characteristics, it must physically exhibit breed characteristics of a 50% purebred Brahman steer. A prominent hump beginning in the middle of the shoulder and going forward must be angled back down to the neck. Any color pattern is accepted. With adequate Bos Indicus head, eye, and ear characteristics, sheath score is irrelevant. What they're talking about, what we said, you can change up the sheath on an American kid, especially a half-blood Brahman. You've got the American Brahman Association that does recognize an Indu Brazil, which is a Bos Indicus breed that will give you more ear and more sheath and more bone. It does recognize an Nelore breed, which will clean up an underline and give you a different muscle pattern on an American Brahman steer. So when you put this in a 50% perspective, it will clean up an individual rather easily and quickly, or give you more underline or dewlap, depending. Discriminatory breed characteristics, a sheath score of a 1. An absolute disqualification is a crest with an inadequate hump. What we're talking about, when you're classifying an animal, especially an American individual, when that animal's walking up towards you in that classification line, you know if it's got any American characteristics in it, looking at the crest of that neck. What we're talking about is if you're looking at that individual and it's walking up to you and the crest of that neck is very narrow, there is no prominent hump. So if that is no crest there, there's going to be a severe disqualification on that. When we look at this steer that we have up here, as you can see, he has a very clean underline. When we look at it, he classifies easily as a committee. You see the prominent hump placement he has above his shoulders going down to that neck. He has a nice head to him when you see that ear placement he's got about him. We go to the next steer. This is the black kid. She scores probably a 3 when we look at him to a 4. He's got the hump placement above the shoulders. When we look at this steer, he's got this bone that we're looking at. When you look at it, he's got that more of a rounded hip, what that we're talking about, that you see in American cattle, but when we're looking at half-bloods, that's rather not important now. We're kind of leveling up that hip, making it better, more marketable, and making it more of a show steer look. Here's the head front of that calf. When you look at the head front of the calf, look at the roll of the eye that you see above him, the broadness of his head that he has. He's got that wide muzzle on him, the ears are open. That's what you're looking when you're looking for a half-blood American calf. Here we're looking at another calf that's gray in color. He classifies when he walks in the classification arena. When we look at him, look at the prominent hump placement he has above the shoulders and that neck. It goes down to that shoulder and massive neck area that he has. He's got a nice underline about him. He's a steer that when we look at him, he's got enough characteristics in that head, neck, and shoulder area to classify as a 50% Brahman. And here's a good front view of that calf as far as the head view. When we look at the muzzle that he has, the openness in that ear, the broadness, and that length over the eye, when we see that curvature over the eye, and as you can tell, you can look at over his hump, the prominent hump that he does have to classify as a Brahman steer. Here we come to a Brennel or tiger stripe steer, however you want to say this calf is. In the color pattern, when he classifies, he's got the pendulous underline about him, which we're not going to be looking at too hard anymore. And when we're looking at this, we're going to look more at the hump placement that he has, what he brings out to you as far as dewlap and structure on that point. He classifies as 50% blood Brahman. Here's a headshot of that calf when you see him. You look at his muzzle that he's got, you see the hump that he has about him. He's got another, you can see the prominent forehead that he brings to you as far as a Brahman steer. Here's a calf that you come to when we as a committee put this slide in here. A calf that doesn't quite have the prominent hump of some of the other steers that we had in the classification. But I think when you see him, you see the half-blood Brahman characteristics that he brings to you as far as his head that he has. He's got enough hump that'll classify to him when we look at this calf. Here's a head shot when we're looking at that head shot. As you can see the overture of the eyes when we see him, the openness of the ear, that hump, that's enough hump for him to classify as a 50% Brahman steer. Here's a calf, when we look at him as a committee, easily classifies as a Brahman. We see the Brennel color, which you can get with several other breed crosses, but when you look at him, he's got that prominent hump that we're looking at that we've been talking about. Here's a head shot of that calf. When you look at his eyes and openness of ears again, when we look at him, that hump going down to that shoulder they were talking about in their criteria. Here's a steer that we as a committee thought would classify easily. He has that prominent hump placement. This is where you need to watch your dehorning. As far as an American calf, the dehorning got a little tight on top, made it more of a pole look to him as far as the top of that pole. When you're dehorning a Brahman, you need to use that base width. If you have a steer that's in question, it depends on who your classifier is. But when we look at this calf, he did get a little deep on the dehorning part. But a calf, as far as a committee, when we look at the phenotypic part, if you take his head off and look from back forward, he has that prominent hump and that Brahman look to the calf. On this set of steers, this is that do not classify as a Brahman, half-blood Brahman characteristics. A very nice American calf. We can tell he's got American influence in him. But when we look at it, he doesn't grab you as far as the overall prominent hump that he should have over that shoulder area that he's got. That doesn't take him out as being classified as a Brahman, but a good American calf. Here's another American calf that we saw, that a good American calf when he walks in. But when you talk about breed character and what we're looking for in a 50% Brahman, he doesn't bring it to us as a committee when we look at him as far as a prominent hump. Yes, he has some crest, and that's what we need to look at. He has some crest, but not the prominent hump that's going down to that neck, as we saw in some of the other pictures of the brown Brennel steer earlier that we were looking at. Here's a calf that we look at, the tiger stripe calf. He doesn't classify as showing 50% Brahman characteristics that he's supposed to have. He doesn't have the prominent hump when we look at it. When you look at him, if you start looking at the dewlap that he has, he doesn't quite show the dewlap as far as the 50% Brahman characteristics. So that's why we didn't classify him as a Brahman steer. That's the classification guidelines for a 50% Brahman that we did come up with as a committee. Thank you.